Welcome to the Empty Cup. I'm Tsering Padron, and this podcast is a small pause in the middle of our busy lives. A moment to look more closely at our mind, at our reactions, our fears, our hopes, and also the possibility of meeting life with more clarity and kindness. And these reflections are not about having the right answers. There is no right or wrong here. They're just invitations to slow down, to question the things we assume, and perhaps be more open to the simplicity of the moment. So wherever you are, just take a breath, hold your empty cup, and let us pour some tea for thought. Everything changes. We know it. We don't even question it. Seasons change, our bodies change, our opinions change, fortunately. The people we love come into our lives, and one day they leave, sometimes by choice, sometimes by circumstance, and eventually, inevitably, through death, anyway. Even while you're listening to this, millions of cells in our bodies are being replaced. The person you were 10 years ago is no longer here. And even the person you were yesterday isn't quite here anymore. Everything changes. We know it. And yet, have you ever had the strange feeling that something has remained exactly the same? Not your personality, that certainly changes. Not your beliefs, hopefully they change. Not even your memories, because they too become blurred and rearrange over time. Every time we think about something that happened, we think differently. No, it's not that. It's something much more subtle, much harder to put into words, almost like the feeling of simply being there. When I think back to myself as a little girl, for instance, there is almost nothing I recognize. Of course, my body is different, my interests are different, my understanding of the world has completely changed. My voice is certainly totally changed. And yet, there is also a curious familiarity, not with who I was, but with the simple fact of being present. That sort of presence that we can recognize now, it's the same kind of presence we can recognize then. It is almost as though life has presented thousands of different phases and faces and circumstances, while something invisible has quietly remained present throughout them all. It's a bit like, the sea. When we sit quietly beside the ocean, we don't really need to do anything. We stop watching individual waves. We simply watch the sea. Every single wave is different. No shape repeats itself. The water never stops moving, not even for a second. Movement is its nature, and yet we get a feeling of the stillness of the sea. Not because it isn't moving, but because the movement somehow never disturbs its presence. Maybe life is a bit like that. We spend enormous amounts of energy trying to stop the waves. We want certain moments to last forever. We want youth to remain, health, relationships, success. Recognition, peace of mind. When pleasant experiences arrive, we whisper, please stay. When difficult experiences appear, we whisper, please go. Much of our suffering seems to come from these two little conversations we constantly having with life. Stay, go away. Stay, go away. But things aren't like that. I was confronted with impermanence very early in life. My family suffered many losses. So when I first encountered the Buddhist teachings on impermanence, it resonated deeply with my experience. And with this unsettling feeling that there is nothing we can hold on to. If everything changes, what can I possibly rely on? If nothing stays, why even make plans? Why fall in love? Why build a relationship? Why build a friendship? Why plant a tree whose shade I may never sit under? If everything is constantly slipping through our fingers, what's the point? There is a kind of insecurity that can arise when we really allow impermanence to sink in. Not just as an idea, but as reality. Everything is changing all the time. It can almost feel as though we're standing on a floor that is never solid, that is always moving. And for quite a long time, I thought that was the whole teaching. That spiritual maturity somehow meant becoming comfortable with uncertainty, learning to accept that life offers no guarantees. And there is certainly truth in that. But I slowly realized something else was being pointed towards, something much subtler. Meditation began to reveal it, not dramatically, and certainly not every day, but in little glimpses, here and there, now and then. Nothing special. The world didn't disappear. The thoughts didn't disappear either, unfortunately. The waves continued exactly as before, but there were moments where I noticed that everything was changing, kind of inside something that wasn't. Please, don't misunderstand me. I'm not talking about a soul or a permanent self. I'm not talking about me becoming internal. It's quite the opposite. It wasn't personal at all. It was more like discovering the open sky. Clouds come and go, storms appear, birds cross it, airplanes cross it. Day becomes night and night becomes day, and the sky allows every one of those changes. Yet none of them leave a scratch upon it. You don't see a trace. It doesn't need to resist the storm. It doesn't cling to the sunshine. It simply has room for both. And little by little, I began to understand why the Buddhist teachings speak not only about impermanence, but also about confidence. At first, it is surprising. Confidence? Where does this confidence come from if everything is uncertain? And then I realized they were speaking about two different things. Ordinary confidence might say, I'll be all right because things will work out. Well, this is more like wishful thinking, actually, because we never know. But the confidence of the view, and by view we mean the experience of that sky or that space, the confidence of the view says, I'll be all right even if things don't work out. Not because I will enjoy every experience, not because I won't grieve, not because I won't lose people I love, not because illness won't come, or old age, or disappointment, it isn't the confidence in circumstances. It is confidence in something far deeper. Confidence that our deepest nature has never depended upon circumstances in the first place. That everything is okay, even when it is not okay. That doesn't mean we become detached from life. If anything, it's quite the opposite. Because once we stop demanding permanence from life, we are finally free to love it, to inhabit fully our own experience without reservation or struggle. We stop asking each moment to become a different one. We stop asking people to become guarantees. We stop asking tomorrow to remove today's uncertainty. Life doesn't become less precious because it changes. It becomes more precious, not despite impermanence, but because of it. A flower is beautiful because it blooms for such a short time. A conversation matters because it will never happen again in the exactly same way. This morning will never return, nor this breath, nor this heartbeat. Impermanence doesn't diminish life, it illuminates it. And yet, there is something else. Something that is almost impossible to describe without sounding contradictory. Everything changes, and yet nothing changes. If we stick to the outer meaning of those words, they sound absurd, a bit like a Zen koan. Surely they cannot be true both at the same time. Either things change or they don't. But perhaps it is not either or. Perhaps they belong together, like the waves and the sea, like the weather and the sky, like music and silence. One cannot exist without the other. Movement reveals stillness, and stillness allows movement. We may try to understand this conceptually. Read books, listen to teachings, think about it endlessly. Thinking certainly brings some understanding. It can bring us close, but not all the way. But then perhaps one day, for the briefest instant, we stop trying to understand. We relax. And there it is. Not an answer, a recognition. It lasts no time at all. It cannot really be described. In fact, the moment we try to describe it, it is already gone. But something is recognized that had never changed. Maybe that is why the great meditation masters often appear so relaxed, not because life has become predictable, far from it. Many of them have lived through exile, illness, loss, and unimaginable hardship. Their peace doesn't come from favorable circumstances. It comes from fully embracing impermanence. And at the same time, discovering something that is always quietly there, complete in itself. Perhaps this is also why compassion becomes so natural. When we realize that every person we meet is living upon moving ground. And that everyone is trying to love in a world that is constantly changing. That everyone loses, everyone fears, everyone hopes. And then our hearts soften. Not because we've solved the mystery, but because we have stopped arguing with it. Perhaps it is all about learning to dance with change without losing the center. to love what passes without trying to imprison it, to discover that movement and stillness are not enemies, they belong to each other, like the sea and its waves, like breathing in and breathing out. Everything changes, and yet something about this very moment, before we name it, before we think about it, before we try to hold it, is complete. Perhaps that's enough for today. Our tea has grown cold now, and life, as always, has quietly moved on. And remember, till the next cup, keep your cup empty and your heart open.